Traveling changes a man, you know.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen out there. This is Tyler Gooden with the Traveling Podcast. Sitting here with my good friend Zach Sutherland. We're here to bring you stories about the world of travel and how that changes a person, how it educates and informs you and makes you a richer human being. So we're going to kick off today's podcast with a little story from Zach, and I'm going to predicate that by kind of introducing this idea of travel changes you while you're away, but your world that you're from also changes. In the Odyssey, Odysseus has to return to Ithaca after having been a transformed person himself, and when he arrives, of course, his home is a different place than it was when he left. So I think this is a big part of travel, is returning home from somewhere else having been changed while the place you're coming back to has also changed. Zach, what are your thoughts on your own experiences with this sort of predicament that we find ourselves in as travelers?
Well, it can be a tough predicament for sure, because it's kind of like you go over there, you have a great experience, your world changes, your perspective on your home country changes, and when you do go back to your home country, a lot of your friends haven't changed that much, or at least haven't changed the way you've changed. And especially if it's like your first time abroad and you spend a significant time abroad, then it will change you, because it'll open up your mind to a new way of living. You may come back thinking like, God, this is so wrong about Americans. Why do we do it this way? We're so superficial. All those things those darn Russians said about Americans, they are true. We are fat. Oh my God.
It always comes back to the Russians' opinion of us.
When you travel, especially to Europe, they know so much more about your culture than you do about theirs.
Yeah.
And it's from like American movies, and because that's our export of American culture. Primary export is through American culture, is through our movies. And unfortunately, in some ways they're wrong about what they think about us, because they think, oh, you speak like a Yankee. And as someone from North Carolina, I was like, wait, I speak like a Yankee? What are you talking about?
Yeah, to them, Yankee is an American.
Yankee is just a typical American accent. And I remember this girl that I was dating told me that this guy that her friend was talking to, he had such a typical Yankee accent. And later on I found out that this guy's from California.
Yeah.
And it's like, in her mind, typical Yankee accent is the movies.
The movies.
The movies is like...
Sound like somebody from the
movies.
movies.
Are like, that's like the California accent, or that's just like the kind of non-specific accent, but that's a typical. It's really strange.
But so just to return to sort of the hub of this is, like, you're changing while you're there, though. You're getting informed, and you're being exposed to their views, but you're actually immersing yourself in another culture, and you're kind of living like them.
Right.
But then you come back, and nobody else, they can't relate to your stories. Like, they're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What about that feeling of...
It's very hard to explain to them how it was so different if they don't experience the same thing. My friend described being in Russia as going on a bungee jump for the first time. Like, you go down and you're just like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then just like you realize, oh, there's a cord attached. Oh, I can go back.
Yeah.
But then when you go back,
you're
like,
tethered.
Oh God, now I'm going up really, really fast. And then you get to the top and you go back down. Oh God! So it's and then eventually you get that equilibrium.
Yeah,
and that's happened
after life. That's a great metaphor.
1 or 2 months for Russia.
You're being tethered to your root, who you really are, but you get a chance to dive closer to something else, and that excitement of the fall of, I'm headed towards this other thing, I'm going to be this other thing. No, I'm not. I'm me. I'm still me. And then you go back up. Yeah.
So that's the way that she described it. My friend Susanna, shout out Susanna. Anyway, and I think it's an accurate metaphor for a lot of different places, especially the crazy ones, just the ones that are way different than America. Because it takes a while to get used to that.
Yeah.
But then once you do get used to it, okay, now you're assimilated. Now you're acting like a Russian.
Yeah.
You're maybe even speaking English like a Russian. Where do you go tonight? I go to bar. You know, or something like that.
Alcohol bar.
Yeah. We go to bar. You know?
I knew a bar in Prague called Alcohol Bar.
Yeah.
That's socialism for you. Yeah, we go to alcohol bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the name of it.
Yeah. You know, it definitely affects you. And I remember, I guess going back to my first experience being in Finland and how, you know, talking to my girlfriend at the time, you know, I would apologize. Something happened where I apologized to my roommate. I did something stupid and I just said, like, I'm sorry. And like she made the remark, she was like, why are you saying you're sorry? You know, are you, that's like a superficial way, like, oh, if you say you're sorry, that means everything's good. You know, or like her point was, you know, Americans just are quick to say, oh, sorry, and then everything's okay.
Right.
It's not always works like that. That's just like, or Americans are quick to say, oh, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And just, I'm fine, I'm good. But that's not a real
It's
answer.
not authentic to them.
Not a real answer.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Europeans would just be like, not, or Finnish people, and especially.
It's all over Europe
don't
like
say
that.
anything.
It's all like that. It's especially anywhere east. Yeah.
You know, that's an example. Another example is just, well, the political thing. You know, whenever I went, I didn't care about politics at all. That was back in the early 2000s, and I said I like Bush more than Gore because Gore fake kissed his wife. And I was like, oh, what an idiot.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you remember that whole fake kiss thing? With Tipper Gore,
I don't remember.
Al Gore, the robot. You know?
I remember Al Gore. I don't remember that. I was in Europe when when Bush got elected, I think, or he was running, I think.
But you know, my girlfriend at the time would like educate me about, you know, all these things, and like, you know, it's not okay to start wars over here, guys.
Yeah.
These are real people over here.
Yeah.
And then after I came back in like 2003, and like I would talk to other Americans, and they would literally say, like, this one girl literally said, like, because this was during the Iraq thing, when they invaded Iraq.
Yeah.
And she was just like, why can't we just bomb those people and just forget it?
Oh God.
And I remember my jaw just dropped.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, like, holy crap. You just don't even realize what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. I have people in my family that spoke like that. And
and I think that if I hadn't gone to Finland and met people, Europeans, who would continually say, like, do you support Bush? Do you really think that he will? We don't like him trying to start wars. You know? And it's just like, good that I talked to everyone, talked to all these people, and I had a girlfriend who was telling me, like, it's terrible how Americans start wars. But, you know, coming back, that was like where I would try to educate Americans.
Right.
And like that's where it was like reverse culture shock. Cause it was like, wow, I lived in this bubble the entire time where we don't really think about our actions abroad. And now that I met people who may be affected by that, that's a huge, like, I have to like make them aware, like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
And so, you know, she educated me a lot in those regards. The other thing that really educated me was like talking with, if you're ever in a Russian bar and you're talking about like your students and you're complaining about how you think some of your students cheat, and you're doing it in a very loud English American way, and then a person from the other side of the room, you know, holds his middle finger up to you and points to you and says, who did you vote for? And you'd say, well, I was, or he says, did you vote for Clinton? And then, by the way, this is a story that happened to me, if you can't pick it up. So that was talking about just that, and the guy overheard me, as English was good enough where he understood that I was complaining about Russian cheating students. And then he flipped me off, and I was like, is that really for me? And he was like, yes. Who are you? Where are you from? America. And then he comes over to the table and gets kind of in my face, and he's like, who did you vote for? Bill Clinton?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wasn't old enough to vote, so no, I didn't vote for Clinton.
Yeah.
And he's like, he attacked our brothers.
The Serbs.
Yeah. In '99, I think it was.
Yeah.
He was very upset with me.
The Serbs and the Russians, they have a real connection with that. Like I didn't realize
Yeah.
how big that was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't realize how big of a connection that
Yeah.
was, and that's a terrible thing.
Well, is it? I mean, sorry, I don't want to get.
What I mean is,
that
it's
was
a terrible thing that
Yeah.
U.S. just bombs somebody and just like, I mean, I think I kind of remember when that happened, when we did get involved
Yeah.
in that situation over there.
Yeah.
But just to send bombs and like, it's not a direct war. It's not like they attacked us first. We were
Yeah, there was a NATO.
playing the natural role that America. has
Well,
played
it was a
some
NATO.
time before.
It was a NATO war, and that's. I mean, and sorry to get off the topic a bit, but this is a real. I mean, I'm not choosing a side here, but I didn't realize until a few years. I think even a few years ago, how closely the Serbs and the Russians were with each other during that period. But that was a NATO decision. I mean, Clinton, of course, was spearheading it, but it was NATO versus the ex-Yugoslav countries, or at least Serbia, and Serbia was connected to Russia, and so all these things are like a geopolitical chessboard, and the same thing's happening now with Ukraine, NATO, and Russia. So I know exactly what you're saying about these guys, like, because they really personalize it. They really personalize those things on those terms, and it really gets. And this is on the point of why it's so valuable what you're saying, because you suddenly find yourself facing nuance. Mm-hmm. You can very easily sit over here in the United States and complain about these things, this or that or the other thing, and then when you get in those countries, or you get around the countries that are affected by those things, you suddenly realize it is not as two-dimensional and as flat as you want it to be. And it sounds to me like you faced that very real thing, which is your country bombed our allies. We're always thinking that America is always on the side of the good, but when you start to get involved with that gray area and you start to realize there's more to this story, you suddenly have to reassess your own worldview.
Yeah. And that changed me.
Yeah.
And then whenever I did come back, it made me much more aware if someone would say something insensitive.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just bomb these people? Because it's like, these are real consequences.
Yes.
And you're saying these words as if like it's, let's just throw this away like it's trash. Like, throw these people their whole lives away like it's trash because they're annoying me. Or
they're evil.
They're just annoying. The girl who said it, that was like her...
That was her worldview.
Her flippant remark, like, their lives don't mean anything. Why can't we just bomb them?
Why can't we just bomb them? Yeah.
Like, wow, that's incredibly insensitive.
Thank God she's not in control of the nuclear arsenal.
That's another reason to go traveling, is because you do talking about being out of your comfort zone. You meet people who they're on the other side of this attitude of, well, let's just bomb them. We are the good ones. We have always been the good people. But look, they grew up in this country that they've had bad political regimes taking over the country. Yeah. But then this other force comes in with this huge, mighty military and wants to interfere. Yeah. And, it messes up lives. War screws up lives in devastating ways. So, I'm not sure how many people actually realize it. But it's important to travel because you get it from people's perspectives. Yeah. Like, this actually happened.
That's it. Yeah.
And Americans have never experienced a war on our home soil.
That's right.
The last one was a civil war, but I mean,
or 18,
and that was 100 and
gosh. Well, just on a quick note on that, I think what you're saying is you're hitting it exactly, like, nail on the head. I just want to kind of put a polish on that. Talking about the Serbs, I have friends that were Bosnian, and they were also escaping the bombing, even though they were on the Allies' side. Like, they had to escape. Like, I knew a girl, she had to escape to Berlin and lived with a gay couple there because her friends were being killed, and some of the bombing that was happening there was from the own allies, and so it's not a cut and dry. It's not such a simple thing, and that girl, by the way, lives in the United States now. So like people that have the two-dimensional view of it probably have that view because they haven't been caught up in the nuance. I think if you go to Ukraine, you talk to Ukrainians, they're going to sound a lot different than the story that you hear about Russia versus Ukraine. Like you can go to Kiev, we're at the heart of the Maidan revolution a few years ago, and you meet Ukrainians there that are speaking Russian, and they're like, no, I like Russians. It's not like some of those Ukrainians I met thought that the revolution was stupid. They hated it. Others I met, they were like so supportive of it. So there's always some level of nuance. You meeting that that Russian guy that was defending the Serbs. Like you don't know you don't know what you're getting into when you're naive. If you're naive enough, you don't know what you're getting into. You go over there with a certain point of view, and you think you know what you're talking about, and then suddenly you'll get educated very fast. But I think you always have to also take it with a grain of salt. They also may not know what you know, so you have to also respect your own views. That's another thing that I learned was don't just give in to what people from foreign countries say because they're trying to educate you. Like I may not have known everything, but the longer I spent over there, the more I started to realize that these people also don't necessarily have everything together. They have corruption, they have wars, they have genocides. Like you have to also use your own judgment and your own education, and that's why it's important to travel, but that's why it's important to keep the bungee cord. Don't just jump and hit the river. Keep yourself tethered to who you are, where you're from. And yeah, you're going to come back changed, but you're going to bring something back with you. And every time you bounce back down on that bungee cord, you're going to bring something back with you. And eventually, as you said, which is a beautiful metaphor, you eventually find your equilibrium.
Mm-hmm. My story about my ex-girlfriend calling me a Yankee, that's one example of not understanding every kind of nuance.
Yeah.
I would try to explain to many people what it's really like to live in America. I would try to explain to Russians, like, not all my friends are fat. We're not all stupid. I think that in America, you get a wide array of different types of people. That's the part of the beauty about coming back to where you live. You do experience the reverse culture shock, where you're kind of like, man, there's so much great partying in Russia or Europe. I like the way they did this a little bit more, and this was really cool. This wasn't so much fun, but man, why can't we do that like that in America? But then you appreciate certain things about America or Americans.
So let's go back to because we have about 10 more minutes in this particular episode. Let's kind of get back to where we started, which is the change that happens within you. Like, how did it change your own perspective about what you needed to do, about where our culture fits into all of this? Like, how about the change that occurred? Because you were gone, the longest you've been gone was a couple of years, I think, right? Mm-hmm. So during that time, I think you were in China. You obviously, that's going to change you a bit. I would imagine you would be informed about what a society could look like, and then you come back, and during that time, your own culture has been changing during those years. I'm just speaking from my own perspective. Living in Canada, I have new appreciation for my own country coming back after having lived in Canada, and I want to preserve and protect things that I noticed that I thought would be in Canada that weren't there, and seeing how Canada has changed, how Canada is changing, and how Canada is becoming unrecognizable in many ways, and seeing how that could happen here. I came back a changed person from my 4 years in Canada for sure, and when I came back, a lot had changed here. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't want to turn this into a podcast about my views. I want to know, did that happen during that time when you were in China, and did anything disturb you while you were there about what you saw in China and what you saw could happen here, and then coming back here and starting, did you question anything? Was there any change in your concerns?
Oh yeah, I mean, you're opening up a big can of worms, but I'm going to dig right in.
Good.
And be as succinct as possible. But, you know, when I was there 2017 to 2020, essentially in China, a lot of crazy stuff was happening in the U.S. regarding politics. And it made me super hyper aware of the problems with limiting free speech, for example.
Okay.
And since I was in a country that limits free speech, I was hyper aware in a way that most Americans, I guess, living within the bubble, living in America, that they were not aware of.
Yeah.
Because in America, this is when cancel culture became a huge thing in America.
Yeah.
And I was living in a culture where you can't talk about certain things.
Yep.
There was the 3 T's that you just don't talk about.
In China.
Tiananmen Square, Taiwan, and Tibet. So that's like...
What about Hong Kong? Why got to leave Hong Kong out of it?
Well, Hong Kong
does it start with a T?
See, yeah, it doesn't. It's not that alliteration yet. That's why they left it out.
Yeah.
No. Hong Kong changed during the time. I was saying that like the 3 T's is like what I read on the internet. You don't talk about.
Yeah.
But during when I was there, and actually a little bit sort of after I was there, it was like happened in like 2019, 2020, and a friend of mine got fired because he wanted to speak his own ideas about that Hong Kong is a free state.
Yeah.
And that was a terrible idea for him to do that. I mean, I don't know why. He was a newbie to China. But
was he from the United States?
No, he was from Australia.
Hmm.
So anyway, but there's an example of what happens when you limit free speech, when you have a government that says you can't talk about certain things, and then someone gets fired. But then at the same time, I was also listening to podcasts and hearing about, people like James Damore from Google, who gets fired from Google from also... This is...
You saw a parallel.
Yeah, this is like a parallel.
You were living in a country that was under a legitimate cancel culture from the top down, and you were watching it happen in your own country while you were living it. Did the alarm bells go off? Did you get concerned, like on a personal level, about what are you going to do back home once you get back? Are you going to spread the gospel, so to speak? Or what was happening inside you, like in that time when you were noticing these kinds of things? Well,
I think I was starved for political conversations with people because, people in China, they just don't. Chinese people, they don't talk politics.
Right.
It's like, what's the point? We know who the ruling party is going to be for 20 years from now. Yeah. It's going to be this one party.
And they don't complain about it. Like, it's not like
it's just not even a thing.
It's not even a thing.
It's just China is great. That's it.
That's it.
There's no discussion.
Right.
But then you see it, and I was concerned because then I saw a lot of things happening in the States where it's like, wow, people are like clamping down, like you can't say certain things. And then so whenever I came back, I was like I was pretty outspoken about what I saw as injustice as it regards free speech. And the mind-blowing thing to me was that more Americans weren't aware that, do you know what is actually going on here?
Yeah.
This is controlling speech.
Yes.
This is a clampdown on free speech. This cancel culture, that's what it is.
That's what it looks like.
And it's amazing that you guys don't...
You're not putting it together.
The people who tried to squash my speech, I was just amazed that you don't realize what's actually going on.
And where it leads you.
Yeah, and where it leads to, exactly. Yeah. See, I got to experience where it leads
to.
Right?
Yeah.
But it just...
So I'm sorry, because I think, man, if I could go back, I would start the entire episode with this topic, because it is a can of worms, but I think it's being handled completely justly and delicately. I think that what you're saying is valuable stuff. Let me ask you what, when you say that, like, it would lead you to this. Like, let's just pretend I'm an alien. What's wrong with limiting speech? Like, when you were in China and you saw that, I mean, you speak not fondly, but also at least somewhat neutrally about them not speaking about politics. Mm-hmm. And you brought it up before that to say otherwise. I said, well, I think, we got to debate. We got to talk about it, because you said, well, that's a very American point of view. But now you're kind of also saying what I would agree with or believe is that is not a good place to be. It's not a good place to be where you're canceled like that, and you're canceled in a very insidious way. I feel like in the United States, it's almost like it's leading us somewhere that people don't realize where it's leading them, because it's so insidious that it's almost like they're preparing these things in stages, and you can't get to that other stage down there until you get this stage out of the way. But what did you see in China that would concern you? Because what if I just said, because I have friends that say it's just great. Like I have friends that just are like, well, look, they're even better at racism than us. It's like, what? Like they're like, I have friends that just talk about China like it's God's gift to humanity, and I'm like, what do you mean? like, do you not see that they can't do the things that they're not allowed to choose some of the things that we're allowed to choose. But then again, I didn't live in China, so I want you to talk about that. Am I wrong? What do you think is so bad about it?
Okay, the bad thing about not having free speech is what you're getting at. Well, if you don't have free speech, if I don't feel comfortable in telling you about my opinions, then I'm not allowed to think freely. Free thought leads to many, many different things. Can you imagine if, an artist such as The Clash or somebody, mm-hmm. they were under the control of like a mm-hmm. authoritarian, mm-hmm. whatever entity.
Why can't we have that? Why can't the Clash be shut up? Why should I be exposed to the Clash?
Because you don't get innovation. You don't get new ideas. You don't get better ideas. Everyone is judging you and me right now based on how well we can articulate our thoughts.
Right.
And if we were having a debate on whatever, the audience is going to judge you based on whether your thoughts make sense.
Wait, are you suggesting that the audience can use their own mind to determine whether or not something is worth anything? That their individual minds are that capable and not dangerous to actually make a decision for themselves that might actually benefit others?
Yeah, it sounds very American, doesn't it?
Well, it just sounds very revolutionary to think such a thing could even happen. I just would imagine that it's much better to control what people think and prevent them from having thoughts that should not be allowed. Because the Clash to me is just awful. Like, how could you think that the Clash should exist when you could have Nicki Minaj singing about her body parts, and thinking
that you're being facetious. There's no way you would make that comparison.
No, I meant the basis for the Clash's wife.
It's also a subjective point of view. You could subjectively listen to the Clash and be like, I prefer the Smiths or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But the whole idea was that like the Clash or any band.
Yeah.
They're free to do exactly whatever experimentation they want to do in order to create their art.
And it doesn't have to be just an artist too. What about scientists? I mean, Elon Musk. Elon Musk was from South Africa, right? And he went to Canada, mm-hmm. but he didn't stay in Canada.
Eventually chose America.
And I've had this conversation with a lot of people about. They talk about Canada like it's like their poo doesn't stink up there, and I'm like. And this is nothing against Canada, because I have a lot of good things about Canada too, but people love to throw darts at the United States. They love it. It's the easiest target. It used to be the easiest target in the world I think a lot of people are second guessing themselves now that you see like the sort of like concentration, and it literally is a camp of concentrated people in Australia. It's not the Holocaust, but it's people are maybe, I don't hear that voice as strongly as I used to, trashing the United States. It used to be just the whipping boy. It was like throw darts at the United States all day long. And I don't see that anymore. But for the longest time I was there, like, guys, there's a reason why you're on Facebook. There's a reason why you wear blue jeans. There's a reason why you listen to rock and roll music. That all came from a wellspring of ideas. And the way the wellspring of ideas was allowed to exist has everything to do with our Constitution and our Bill of Rights.
Yeah. Right. And there was another thing that I wanted to tell you, which is an essential point about why having free speech is so much better than not having it. When I was probably in the 7th grade, I went to a Christian school, and I remember a science teacher of ours, we were watching this video on how to dissect a frog, and they were introducing the frog, and at one point she said she's got to stop the video and fast forward it past this one part, and somebody was like, why are you fast forwarding it? And she was like, oh, they're going over some stuff about evolution, and we're not.
Wow.
We're the Lord made. We're a creationism school here, so
she curated
evolution
it.
is just a theory, and it doesn't really exist. So we're going to skip over that. Well, you know what? That made everyone, I'm sure, at least me, but probably most people in that room, like, want to watch it even more.
Right.
Because here's the thing.
Right.
Rather than silence an opinion, if that opinion is already wrong, then you should hear it anyway.
Yeah.
Because a smart person will be able to tell you that's wrong.
Right.
And you have to give them that opportunity to think for themselves.
It keeps your brain sharp.
Because otherwise you're going to think to yourself, well, if they're wrong anyway, why not just show it, and then I can see how that they're wrong.
Absolutely.
That's so much better way to proving someone is wrong than saying we're not going to let them speak. We're not going to.
Absolutely.
So that's my point.
That's a great point to end on, because just to wrap that up is, otherwise you end up with a flat brain, and flat brains are stupid brains, and stupidity leads to destruction.
Yeah.
Stupid people ruin everything.
Yeah,
so
it's really essential to critical thought, is having different points of view and judging which one is the best.
You can't have a sharp spear unless you sharpen all sides. Mm-hmm. Otherwise you have a flat, dumb, down thing that does nothing, and you end up with just a stupid bunch of hypnotized chickens, and they'll do anything that they're told. And on that note, because we have gone over 30 minutes, but I love the way the conversation went into this what's at stake when things are changing, and how important change can be, and how dangerous change can be. Change and revolution, people get revolution confused. Just because it's a revolution doesn't mean it's benign. You can have a malignant you can look at the Iranian Islamic Revolution. That was not a healthy outcome. You can look at the Velvet Revolution. That was a healthy outcome. So I think we have to end this, because otherwise we'll end up going way off topic, and we're already over 30 minutes. So I just want to end that by saying that was an enriching conversation about how this change occurs, and how that does enrich us as travelers. Yeah, and
ultimately it is about traveling. I don't think you can get the depth and the level of seeing how something like free speech is important unless you lived abroad.
You need to see it. You need to see what the counterpoint is. Man, this conversation, there's so much to talk about. Maybe we can do more about that topic in another episode, because I think we need to wrap this up for the audiences out there, who I hope will tune in to another conversation. And thanks for everyone to listening. I like how we went a little bit off of travel to talk about the counterpoint of having the outside perspective of what could happen that you've been able to see when it does happen that way.
Right.
All right. See you guys in the next one.
Traveling changes a man, you know. For better or worse, who could say? But when I die, don't you tell them I went out this way. Tell them I said something. Yeah, tell them I said something great.